Jamunatirambanachari. Jamunatirambanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Bala Bhagiri Hari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamunatirambanachari Jamunatirambanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Bala Bhagiri Hari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Premanandi Harigo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nasta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. What a joy to be here with everyone this morning, this holiday morning where we have a little relaxed time. And it's a good day to have this particular class because this is a Sandhyam. We are transitioning from Canto 1 to Canto 2 in Srimad Bhagavatam. So before we get into Canto 2, Nitai, would you be kind enough to put up the table of contents from Canto 1? We'll just do a quick little overview review. This is Thank you. So I have a question for you. If you had to define one person that the first canto is about more than anyone else, who would that person be? Parikshit Maharaj. Yes, Parikshit Maharaj. And so what I'd like to do is, starting at the last chapter, 19, that we just finished, let's go working backwards, and see how Maharaj Parikshit is connected with at least the first 16 or 17 chapters, okay? So who would like to say how he's connected with chapter 19? It's an easy one.
Srikadeva Swami only appears because
He's right, he's the main speaker in this chapter. Hey, sages, here I am, please. By the way, he asked for 3 benedictions from the sages there in chapter 19, and it so happens it's the same 3 benedictions that the garland maker in Mathura asked of Krishna when Krishna went to visit him. Do you remember these 3 benedictions he requested?
One is devotion to the Lord and association with it.
Devotion to the Lord, association with devotees, and compassion for all living beings.
Yes, friendly dealings with everybody. Nice. Okay, chapter 18. That's obvious also. You got cursed, very good. Somebody's really paying attention back there. And who did he get cursed by? Very good, nice, sharp. And what was his name? So, yeah, right. No, you're showing some depth of knowledge. Right, and 17. How was Maharaj Parikshit involved with this?
He runs into the personality of Kali, confines him.
He runs into the personality of Kali Yuga and was about to actually take him out because he was participating in cow slaughter, or at least attempting to. And
yes, actually he encountered him.
Confined him to, certain places
That's
that
right.
were represented by the 4 sinful principles.
You kind of merge 16 and 17 together there, yes, but that's fine. 17, he's giving the judgment. 16, he's encountering him and having this conversation with Dharma. Good. So yes, he's out touring his kingdom. He encounters this. He deals with it. That's how he is the main focus of these chapters. How about now we're getting to the little more difficult ones. How is he connected to chapter 15?
The Pandavas are only able to retire karmically because Maharaj Parikshit can take over.
Because Maharaj Parikshit is there, the Pandavas are able to retire, and because the Pandavas retire, he ascends to the throne. Good. Okay? How about chapter 14? How were the Pandavas, or what prompted the Pandavas to retire?
Krishna left.
Because Krishna's disappearance, exactly. And then 13? Well, how was that connected with Maharaj Parikshit? Pardon me?
He was in the family.
He was in the family. Oh, come on. This was, okay, Prabhuji. Use the microphone if you don't mind.
The point is made in one of the purports that actually Vidura's instructions are to all of the people present, including the Pandavas.
That's true.
That's induced them to.
How does this relate to Maharaj Parikshit's ascendance to the throne? It's the first crack in the life of Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira's ruling, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden there is this tragedy in his life. Dhritarashtra's gone, Vidura's gone, Gandhari's gone. It's very out of context to the happiness that he's enjoying as a ruler. So it's just a precursor to his abandoning the throne and turning it over to Parikshit. Okay, how about chapter 12? Well, any guesses? Brilliant, Kartikeya, you really. Yeah, this is the whole horoscope, telling all the qualities. How about chapter 11?
Lord Krishna enters and has all the wonderful association with the inhabitants of Dwarka.
Krishna returns to Dwarka. Okay, now again, we're working backwards. So why did Yudhisthira send Arjuna off in chapter, I was reading about in chapter 14. Why did he send them off? Well, he wanted to hear how Krishna is doing. Krishna had now left after making all the arrangements for Yudhisthira to be in charge. Now Krishna has returned to Dwarka. And so Yudhisthira is saying, Arjuna, please go and see how they're doing. No internet in those days. Okay? Of course, similarly, he's leaving, so they're beginning to feel separation. Go ahead. How is this related? The passing of Bhishma, how is that related to Parikshit? Yeah, but it's all the same theme. All of these things are just setting up the kingdom going to Yudhisthira. Because what was Bhishma doing in this chapter? He's encouraging Yudhisthira how to rule the kingdom. He's letting him know you're able to do it in spite of all of your depression, in spite of all of the difficulties. That you will be able to do it. So again, this is setting up Yudhisthira for all that is to come. Okay, chapter 8, obviously. This is where, who does Parikshit see? Krishna in the womb, yes. Right. Chapter 7. Son of Drona punished. Why was he punished? He killed the sons of Draupadi, and then what did he do? He tried to kill Parikshit, you see. So you see how Parikshit is actually the central character of the entire first canto after we get past the first 5 chapters. Chapters 1 and 2 set the scene with Shaunika Rishi and the questions of the sages and Sutta, and then chapter 4 and 5 deal with Narada and Vyas, again, giving the background of Srimad Bhagavatam. So as soon as all the preliminaries are done, it's all about Maharaj Parikshit. Just leading up to this point where we ended yesterday, hear how Maharaj Parikshit is on the bank of the Ganga, ready to die, and here comes Shukadev Goswami. It's such an amazing description of Shukadev Goswami. First of all, he's naked. He's walking in naked to this assembly of the greatest sages in the universe. He just walks in, and all these little kids are following him and teasing him and making fun of him, and he's like completely aloof. And as soon as he walks into the assembly, because these sages know physiognomy, they can just immediately recognize this person is most advanced. And Parikshit Maharaj, of course, just asked, please instruct me. So they all collectively say, you instruct them. Very little about Shukadev Goswami in the first canto, only a couple of references. Anyone remember where we hear about Shukadev in the first canto?
It is described how he didn't want to come out of his mother's womb because he was Brahmin realized until he heard.
That's true, although it comes in more detail later in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, and then he went into the forest.
That we hear, yes. How as soon as he was born, he took off. And what happened when he took off? Vyasadeva went following him, yes, calling out for him. And he walked by the girls who were taking baths in the lake, and Sukadev walked by, they didn't even blink an eye. Vyasadeva came by and asked, oh! And then Vyas stops and says, wait a minute, you didn't do that when my son went by. And he said, well, that's because he's self-realized, and with all due respect, you're not quite on that level. So that we hear about Shukadev, and then very briefly we hear later a couple of more details about Shukadev's life in the first canto. Anyone else remember? Kartikeya?
I don't know if it's about his life, but it's mentioned that he's like a parrot when
That's true, yes. In the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, mentioned, because he's tasted the Bhagavatam, it's sweeter, because he's spoken it. Yes. There's just one other brief reference to Shukadev's life.
There's one There's one glorification of him. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement, the cream of Vedic knowledge, after having personally assimilated it by experience.
Very good. And where is that from?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, so okay, good. So this is just a brief mention again of him in the beginning. Sutta is giving deference to Shukadev before he begins answering the sages.
I was also thinking about the first 5 chapters, and I was thinking how throughout the Bhagavatam, how Parikshit Maharaj asks different questions and the points he brings. A lot of stuff is in concise forms in the first 5 chapters about the incarnations, about different things. It's there, and then it's almost as if then Parikshit Maharaj is asking questions for further elaborations. So I was thinking, even in that sense, it's connected with the first 5.
That's a very good point. Yes. What about? So there's just a couple more biographical details, then we'll move on about Shukadev. How long would he stay in a place when he visited?
Long enough to milk a cow.
Just long enough to milk a cow, right? That's mentioned. And then, what was his life like? What was he doing? This is described in the first canto. He's a mendicant. He just wandered about. People thought he was a little crazy, and then he was completely aloof and just wandered about here and there. You actually see babbas like this in India. Chris, be prepared. Especially at gatherings, religious gatherings like Kumbh Mela. So, very little about Shukadev Goswami, but a lot about Maharaj Parikshit. Why do you think that might be? There's so much emphasis on they're having a conversation. And in one sense, Shukadev is the superior, he's the guru. Why so much about Parikshit? Any ideas?
He's the example that we should follow in receiving the knowledge of Bhagavatam.
Very good. So what are some aspects of Parikshit's life to which we can relate? Max?
It's coming to an end very shortly.
It's coming to... Okay. Anything a little less gloomy?
He was a family man.
He was a family man, householder. He was a householder, right? Whereas Shukadev was like, no, thank you. He was completely transcendental to any ashram or varna. Okay, so that's one thing. What else about Parikshit that we can relate to?
He had a job.
He had a job. Yes, yes, that's right. Yes. What else?
Temper. He lost his
He
temper.
lost his temper. He made a mistake. He made a mistake. That's right. So these are all, he was a householder, he had a job, he had a family, and he made a mistake. So these are all things that we can easily connect with. Whereas Shukadev, I don't know, other than Gopal, I can't think of anyone who connects with Shukadev Goswami. So now, one other interesting thing about Parikshit in Canto 1, he speaks on a number of occasions, right? He has the soliloquy we just read in the 19th chapter, asking for instruction, asking for benedictions. He speaks with Kali and Dharma, and he relishes hearing about his relatives, the Pandavas. But Shukadev doesn't say a single word in the entire first canto. Now, at the beginning of the second canto, Shukadev Uvacha. Now, he lets loose. So these are the verses we're going to read. Right? Any other questions, reflections on the first canto before we move on? Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it's similar to the Gita. Krishna doesn't speak right away, first Arjuna is speaking. and then later on Krishna speaks.
Yes. Do you remember the first thing that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita? Anybody remember? Yeah, check out these armies. Very, very neutral. Very neutral. Bruce?
Does the first canto take place after the 10th canto?
Yes. Chronologically, everything is topsy-turvy in not only in Bhagavatam, but generally in the Vedic tradition. We have a very linear way of thinking in the West, and so to us that seems peculiar, but in the Shastras it's more thematic and less chronological. Yeah, all of this takes place after the in fact, it starts at the end. It's sort of like, what is they call a prequel or a backstory. The Bhagavatam begins with this dramatic scene where all the sages are gathered. What's going to happen to the world? And so then the whole backstory, everything that's come before, is told in the subsequent 12 cantos. Okay, yes, Prabhu.
Yes. Yeah, that previously Vyasadeva had written the Mahabharata, so Parikshit was somebody people were familiar with from that, whereas Shukadeva Goswami is not so prominent. So that's another.
Very interesting. In Shukadeva we see almost exclusively in the Bhagavatam. Yeah, very good. Okay, anything else? Okay, so this first canto is so foundational to understanding the Bhagavatam, and and all these reasons we've just discussed, it is unique amongst the 12 cantos. It's all about the preliminaries, it's all about the foundation, and now we're going to start the instruction in Canto 2. So, of course, he begins with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and the translation, let's read this together. O my Lord, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Okay, let's read around the room. Ladies' side, men's side. Anyone start, please?
Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists."
Appreciating the question. This beautiful purport Prabhupada talks about. Anyway, go ahead.
Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor.
Yes, you could be talking about so many things, but you're asking this relevant spiritual question.
The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members.
All of you planning to get married, you should chant 16 rounds of this mantra every day.
Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction.
O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries.
The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life.
It's a concise answer to this question.
O King Parikshit, mainly the topmost transcendentalists who are above the regulative principles and restrictions take pleasure in describing the glories of the Lord.
At the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva.
O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses.
That very Srimad Bhagavatam I shall recite before you because you are the most sincere devotee of Lord Krishna. One who gives full attention and respect to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam achieves unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation.
O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge.
This is our verse to study in depth today, so let's go ahead and do this. That's good. Did you like the Radhika Prabhu's doing the synonyms first the other day? Yeah. So let's do the synonyms together and then we'll chant. Etat, it is, nirvidyamananam, of those who are completely free of all material desires. Ichatam, of those who are desirous of all sorts of material enjoyment. Akutobhayam, free from all doubt and fear. Yoginam, of all who are self-satisfied. Nripa, O King. Nirnitam, decided truth. Hare, of the Lord, Shri Krishna. Nama, holy name. Anu, after someone, always. Kirtanam, chanting. Etan nirvidyamananam. Ichatam akutobhayam. Yoginam nripanirnitam. Harer namanukirtanam. Etan nirvidyamananam. Ichatam akutobhayam. Yoginam nripanirnitam. Harer namanukirtanam. Please chant. Etan nirvidyamananam. Ichatam akutobhayam. Etan nirvidyamananam. Ichatam akutobhayam. Yoginam nripanirnitam. Harer namanukirtanam. Etan nirvidyamananam. Ichatam akutobhayam. Yoginam nripanirnitam. Harer namanukirtanam. Okay. Translation together, please. Okay, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Doubtless a fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. So we'll need 3 volunteers to read the report this morning. Who'd like to take the first shift? Go ahead, Asika Prabhu.
In the previous verse, the great necessity for attaining attachment to Mukunda has been accredited. There are different types of persons who desire to attain success in different varieties of pursuits. Generally, the persons are materialists who desire to enjoy the fullest extent of material gratification. Next to them are the transcendentalists who have attained perfect knowledge about the nature of material enjoyment and are thus aloof from such an illusory way of life. More or less, they are satisfied in themselves by self-realization. Above them are the devotees of the Lord, who neither aspire to enjoy the material world nor desire to get out of it. They are after the satisfaction of the Lord, Sri Krishna. In other words, the devotees of the Lord do not want anything on their personal account. If the Lord desires, the devotees can accept all sorts of material facilities. And if the Lord does not desire this, the devotees can leave aside all sorts of facilities, even up to the limit of salvation. Nor are they self-satisfied, because they want the satisfaction of the Lord only. In this verse, Sri Shukadev Goswami recommends the transcendental chanting of the holy name of the Lord. By offenseless chanting and hearing of the holy name of the Lord, one becomes acquainted with the transcendental form of the Lord, and then with the attributes of the Lord, and then with the attributes of the Lord, and then with the transcendental nature of his pastimes, and so on. Here it is mentioned that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord after hearing it from the authorities. This means that hearing from the authorities is the first essential. Hearing of the holy name gradually promotes one to the stage of hearing about his form, his attributes, his pastimes, and so on, and thus the necessity of the chanting of his glories develops successively. This process is recommended not only for the successful execution of devotional service, but also even for those who are materially attached. According to Sri Shukadev Goswami, this way of attaining success is an established fact, concluded not only by him, but also by all other previous acharyas. Therefore, there is no need of further evidence. The process is recommended not only for the progressive students in different departments of ideological success, but also for those who are already successful in their achievement as fruitive workers, as philosophers, and as devotees of the Lord.
Okay, now we're going to take a moment before we go on. Next section is all about the 10 offenses, and this is why this purport is so monumental and important. But before we go there, the content of the verse is expressing how various people, everybody, regardless of their condition, should chant. My little grandson just turned 3, and he's at the stage we call the why stage. Anything you say, he asks why. It's time for lunch. Why is it time for lunch? Because we're hungry. Why do we get hungry? Because we do things. Why do we do things? I mean, it just really literally goes on, and whatever you say, it's why. So similarly, as devotees, we don't use why, we use a different interrogatory. What is the one that we use? Yeah, how? Indian philosophy. We ask, how can we go from where we are to the stage of having attachment? How can we become free of material desires? How can we get past the negative feelings that we sometimes have towards other people or situations? How? One of my elder godbrothers once said that whenever he would finish a class and ask for questions, if the question began with how, he just cut him off and said, just chant Hare Krishna. Not very nuanced approach. Yet it does underscore an important point that the test is not so much how we deal with issues in our lives, but whether we continue chanting when they arise. The race goes to the tortoise, not the hare. The hare can go really fast, but the tortoise is very persistent. And that's what it takes to persist in our chanting, regardless of difficulties. That is what makes, that answers every how question. And we don't like those answers because we're in the which mode? Yeah, we like instant gratification, and especially in the internet age, in the television age. You realize that there was a time when there was practically no one watched television. Can you imagine? No one ever looked at a screen because there are no screens to look at. It was a big thing that they would gather around a radio and listen. The whole family would gather around and listen. Can you imagine that? And it wasn't that long ago. It was like in my, more or less in my lifetime. But now, every 3 seconds, movie producers know that you have to change the visual every 3 seconds in order to keep the audience attentive. It's 3.5 seconds. It's like, boring. So persisting in Krishna consciousness is possible if we're in the right varna and the right ashram. That's where varna and ashram are so important. If we're in the right position in life, we can consistently continue our efforts to chant. All right, who'd like to read now about the 10 offenses? John, you want to read? Yeah.
Srila Jiva Goswami instructed that the chanting of the holy name of the Lord should be loudly done, and it should be performed offensively as well.
Would you care to correct that?
It should be performed offensively as well, as recommended in the Padma Purana. One can deliver himself from the effects of all sin by surrendering himself unto the Lord. One can deliver himself from all offenses at the feet of the Lord by taking shelter of his holy name. But one cannot protect himself if one commits an offense at the feet of the holy name of the Lord. Such offenses are mentioned in the Padma Puranas as being 10 in number.
Oh, interesting. Here it breaks it up. Here in the book, it's all one paragraph. So why don't we pass it around? That's okay. All right, who'd like to read the first paragraph?
The first offense is to vilify the great devotees who have preached about the glories of the Lord.
This one is underpins basically all the rest. If we can avoid this one, then we have a good chance of avoiding all the rest. But if we can't avoid this one, then all the rest are going to come successfully. So how do we avoid criticizing devotees? Krishna Kripa. Meditate on the good qualities. I thought you were going to just say keep constantly traveling. Like yes, meditate on the good qualities. Yes, Christina.
I think it's also important to cultivate a non-judgmental attitude, to realize that, the world is big enough for all kinds of different people. And so it's not just like the thing that you do or the thing that you like is the only right thing. Right. Because that way you can avoid, comparing and being like, oh, they don't do it my way, so therefore they're not good.
Very good. That's right. Even those people who are wrong. Yes. Especially those. Yes, it said if we compare ourselves to other people, we become vain or bitter. Either way, we lose. So the whole exercise of comparing ourselves, we don't have to be responsible for others, nor do we evaluate ourselves in comparison to others. We evaluate ourselves in comparison to what? Yes, exactly, how we're progressing. Good. All right. Any other thoughts about this all-important first offense? Number 2.
The second offense is to see the holy names of the Lord in terms of worldly distinction. The Lord is the proprietor of all the universes, and therefore he may be known in different places by different names, but that does not in any way qualify the fullness of the Lord. Any nomenclature which is meant for the Supreme Lord is as holy as the others, because they are all meant for the Lord. Such holy names are as powerful as the Lord, and there's no bar for anyone in any part of the creation to chant and glorify the Lord by the particular name of the Lord as it is locally understood. They are all auspicious, and one should not distinguish such names of the Lord as material commodities.
Okay, good. So this is speaking about how could you characterize this in a word? Sectarianism, or in a positive sense, like interfaith appreciation. Excuse me, I always remember by HG Prabhu, if you go out and doing book distribution, sometimes you'll meet our Christian brothers who will do their best to dissuade us from the path of doom. And and conversations with these devotees, they are devotees of God, are generally not so productive. So Vaisheshika Prabhu will just say, "Oh, you're a Christian. I'm glad. We really need God-conscious people out here. Keep up the good work, brother." And just move on. Yeah, yes. Once we had there was a young Christian student. And by the way, the whole idea of spirituality is just like going down. I've seen it here over even the last 15 years in Gainesville. It's just the practice of religion, the affiliation with religion is just, it's amazing how fast it's deflating among students, just like before my eyes. But we did have one zealot Christian boy who was coming to Krishna lunch. And this is probably 15 years ago. And he and his buddies were kind of like envious of seeing so many people coming to the Krishnas. And they really thought it was horrible because all from their point of view, everybody taking prasadam was going to hell. So he decided to hassle us. And so he would come to the ticket counter and say, I don't have any money today, but I want to eat. So the devotees would duly give him a coupon, and he'd go and get his plate. And so he was doing this every day. And just to harass us and just to show off to his friends, his Christian friends, how he was hassling the Krishnas. And well, I decided to follow him one day. And he took the plate and went over to Turlington Plaza and dumped it in a trash can. And then he was standing with his buddies laughing. And so I walked up to him, I said, "So how do you feel Jesus would think about what you just did?" And he was so embarrassed that the next day he came and gave me a gift certificate to a salad bar restaurant. But the point is that sectarianism is an example of this offense. It's amazing, isn't it? But this is exactly what Prabhupada focuses on. And people just have different ways of dealing with spirituality according to their tradition. There's so many jokes I could tell about this subject, but we're going to move on. We'll come back to it later. Okay, next.
Offense is to neglect the orders as acharyas or spiritual masters.
You see how if we are envious of devotees, then this one naturally follows, and the second one as well. Okay, any comments on this? Yes.
I was thinking, we normally say third offense is not following the instructions of the spiritual master. And over here, Prabhupada says the acharyas or spiritual masters. So it's actually both, not just our direct spiritual master, but also like Prabhupada and the general instructions. It's everything has to be followed. Not just,
the difficulty in that is what? Well, who's authorized, but beyond that,
like they're not there, I guess.
What happens if there's different instructions, right?
Well, I guess I was referring to general instructions.
General instructions.
Yeah, not specific life instructions, but like general instructions.
Right.
It's given plenty.
Exactly.
General instructions how to do things. Even for me, the pet peeve about how to do kirtans. And Prabhupada has so many instructions how to do it and how to not do it. And devotees just don't follow it sometimes.
Yes. This is just a general point. I make this often, but I think it bears repeating that when Srila Prabhupada was with us, there were a lot of direct instructions for his disciples, a lot. You go here, you do this, because everybody was a sold-out missionary. And so they were coming to him for instructions to help him spread the movement in his elder years, and he gave them and we followed them. And then in his books, he gave the general guidelines, but there were a lot of specific instructions because people wanted them. But today, it's different because the instructions, even Srila Prabhupada saw that he would advise devotees, for example, to get married. Why don't you marry this one? In the very early days. When the first marriage blew up, it was Krishna Dasi and Subal. If you read Prabhupada's letters from that, he's just shocked. He's just like, how can you do this? It's like something he had never experienced or seen, that somebody could actually break a marriage. And after there were a couple more, he just said, okay, I'm not getting involved in any more marriages. You see, you married at your own risk. So this is an example that when there are very specific instructions from the spiritual master, it puts the disciple in a precarious situation. Sometimes we hear that, you take initiation, then you have to do whatever the guru says. Well, that technically is true, but the experienced Diksha Guru will not give a lot of specific instructions, may not give any, in fact. Why? Because then it just creates a barrier. It's like caveat emptor, buyer beware. As soon as you give a specific instruction, if the disciple doesn't follow it, the relationship is messed up. So the initiation vows are unimpeachable instructions, irrefutable instructions that cannot be violated. Those are taken in public, and they're consistent and clear, and that's the contract between guru and disciple. But beyond that, everything is details. Everything is details. So just in considering your initiation and your relationship with your initiating guru, keep this in mind, that Srila Prabhupada wanted independent, thoughtful devotees who could make and take responsibility for their own life decisions. So that's what it means to be fixed up in Krishna consciousness. I can make mature, intelligent decisions about my own life. I'm not going to a guru to say, should I go right, left, up, or down? It's my right hand, left hand. These things are not the business of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is there to be accountable to in the progressive execution of chanting 16 rounds and following the regulative principles. And the guru may give advice, but not specific instructions. Specific instructions only at great peril. Did you have a thought framework? Shruti, I hope we're a little relaxed on time today, right? I'm going to give you a get out of my presence.
In regards to we need to be mature enough and spiritually stable enough to make our own decisions and not ask Guru to guide us left and right every time, but we also need to have Guru's blessings that, okay, I feel like you're ready to do that now. I feel like you're ready, because I might decide that I want to do something that's not good for me, and my Shiksha Gurus might say no, and then in the future, then I can actually make that decision. But right now I need to just listen to my Shiksha Gurus.
Well, that's an individual matter. If we feel the weight of having to make our own decisions, we'll naturally want to consult people that we trust. We'll naturally want to seek advice. And so we seek advice, but then the decision remains ours. You see, that's the difference. As opposed to saying, yes, you should do that, which Prabhupada did often. But that was a different set of circumstances. So we feel the weight, we want to take advice. Taking advice from our guru, that's very wise. But it's different. We still have to make our own decision. That's the important part. Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Giriraj Swami shares in this regard, Prabhupada, when he saw that he had the ability to write, he gave him the instruction you should write.
Yes.
But when Giriraj Maharaj then went to Mumbai, the situation was such that the leader there, Shamsundar Prabhu, wanted him to do certain other services.
Mm-hmm.
He thought Prabhupada also said to cooperate. So if I cooperate with my leader, maybe that's the highest principle. I cannot write right now. So when Prabhupada saw him later, he, in a couple of months, he asked him, are you following my instruction? Are you writing? He was but Prabhupada, I couldn't do this because he had so many services for the Bombay festival. And Prabhupada said, well, that's all right. You can suspend, following your spiritual master's order, but you should never neglect it. So when you have time, you should start writing again.
Which he's doing now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very good point. Yes. Also, if you remember, you've been obviously reading about his life. Prabhupada asked him whether he wanted to go to Bombay or Calcutta. You remember that whole exchange? You remember this? It was very, very instructive. He was forcing Giriraj Maharaj to make the decision Giriraj Maharaj was very calculatingly floating this and floating that, trying to get Prabhupada to indicate what he wanted, and Prabhupada was not biting. So, all right, let's read on. Okay.
That's the one on Guru, that there's a Shruti Kirti tells a story about somebody wanted to get a divorce, and Prabhupada said it was okay, and it was like that was completely shocking, and so later on he asked him, and Prabhupada said, well, he was going to get divorced anyway. If I forbade him, then he would have disobeyed the order of the spiritual master. It would have been really bad. So.
Yes, yes, I happen to know that devotee very well.
Really?
Yeah, he divorced wife 1 for wife number 2, and now he's divorced wife number 2. So yeah, the purport is just gets back to the how question. How can I just be satisfied with what I have? That's the mode of goodness. All right. So. Yes, Prabhu.
So I guess how do you decipher how much one should stick to Prabhupada's many instructions, or just or pointers in general to many things? How much of a stickler one should be? Of course, there's time and place, but some things I feel like are just eternal and very few circumstances where they could really change.
Yes. Anyone with a Veda base and a laptop can justify just about any position. So the answer to that is that Prabhupada said we should be impressive and not repressive. Be impressive and not repressive. In other words, if we have some particular strain of subjects or instructions that we find in Prabhupada's books and letters and lectures that inspire us, and we apply them and they're productive, that's impressive. But if we then say, so you have to do it just like I did or else you're not following Prabhupada, that's repressive. So to actually apply them and show by example is what counts. And Prabhupada's books, he said, are like a drugstore. You go into the drugstore and you're feeling sick, and what do you go up and down? Oh, that looks good. That looks good. It's just speculation. But if you have a prescription from an authorized doctor, then you know exactly what medication to get. So similarly, in Prabhupada's books, we can take guidance from those who are more advanced in them to help us find what is appropriate for our particular situation. He could give very contradictory instructions. Right? I love that story about the 2 swamis who was chastising one. Why are you sitting here in Vrindavan? You should be out traveling at Sannyas Dharma. And the other, he said, and you stay here and manage Vrindavan. And everybody laughed because it was just so obviously contradictory right on the spot. So what is applicable for us is the question. Which instructions of the Acharya? Okay, you feeling cold? Yeah, we don't need the air conditioner and the windows open, do we? Okay. All right, next offense. Anyone else? All ladies, anyone like the ladies' side know how to read? Just teasing.
The 4th offense is to vilify scriptures or Vedic knowledge.
Any discussion? Okay.
The 5th offense is to define the holy name of the Lord in terms of one's mundane calculation. The holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord himself, and one should understand the holy name of the Lord to be non-different from him.
There was a man who was publishing Back to God, or printing Back to Godhead for devotees years ago, and they were a big customer because in those days it was hundreds of thousands of magazines per month. And they interviewed him for the Back to Godhead about chanting. He was chanting a little bit, and he said, I really like chanting. It really charges my batteries. So it's hard to tell whether he was actually getting his batteries charged or he was trying to make good with his customer. So Prabhupada did not like that particular reference, as if there's some material benefit that you get from chanting.
The sixth offense is to interpret the holy name. The Lord is not imaginary, nor is his holy name. There are persons with a profound of knowledge who think the Lord to be an imagination of the worshipper, and therefore think his holy name to be imaginary. Such a chanter of the name of the Lord cannot achieve the desired success in the matter of chanting the holy name.
Yes, in other words, chanting. There is a popular kirtan leader, Krishna Das, you may know, whose kirtans are very popular, but he does not believe in Krishna. He likes the chanting, and he likes people chanting. He says, oh yeah, nothing religious here.
I just have a quick comment on the one we just read. From the Radhika Raman's presentation at the BI conference on Sunday, he was talking about how so in his academic scholarly work, like he uses the term interpret a lot because in academics it's not a loaded word, but he noted significantly that Prabhupada often used the word interpret to mean misinterpret. And so it's kind of this thing that among devotees, the word interpret or the concept of just interpretation can feel, like wrong. But he was kind of making the point that even if you have quote unquote a literal interpretation, that's still an interpretation. Like what you think is this is, just plainly what it means, obvious. No tricky thing. That's still an interpretation. And just interpreting itself is necessary and not bad. So we should. So it's good to keep in mind that when Prabhupada says interpret in a negative way, he means misinterpret.
Very good. Do you know the word for that? The interpretation of scripture? Hermeneutics. Yeah. So it gets back to that discussion about instructions. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, next. This is the worst offense. Prabhupada said the worst offense.
Seventh offense is to commit sins intentionally on the strength of the holy name. In the scriptures, it is said that one can be liberated from the effects of all sinful actions simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. One who takes advantage of this transcendental method and continues to commit sins on the expectation of neutralizing the effects of sins by chanting the holy name of the Lord is the greatest offender at the feet of the holy name. Such an offender cannot purify himself by any recommended method of purification. In other words, one may be a sinful man before chanting the holy name of the Lord, but after taking shelter in the holy name of the Lord and becoming immune, one should strictly restrain oneself from committing sinful acts with the hope that his method of chanting the holy name will give him protection.
Yes, to sin in ignorance is excusable. To sin in knowledge is an exacerbated offense. Okay, any other comments? John? Yeah, John first and then Gopal. Okay, you got a mic? Please go ahead, Prabhu. John, go right ahead.
That brings to mind the process of rosary chanting in Catholicism, that you're able to I will be able to go to you and say, last night I did X, Y, Z, and you say, all is forgiven, chant 16 rounds. So why is that not permittable?
Because of the repeated nature of the sin. If we commit a sin and we are repentant, that is excusable. But if we do it again, maybe a second time, Prabhupada said, but a third time, no. So that's the meaning of this offense. To have a fall down or to make an offense, apichet sudaracharo bhajate amananyabhat. If one resumes devotional service, one can become rectified and must be considered saintly. It's an offense to a Vaishnava to say, oh yeah, this person fell down 10 years ago. Did you know that? That's an aparad. So we have to overlook that. But if it's a repeated and one is coming back again and again for forgiveness, then that dries up after 3 attempts. Okay, Gopal Prabhu.
Yeah, I've heard that once is an accident, twice is an accident, 3 times is an offense.
Yeah.
something like that. But it's just there's no atonement for any of the offenses except continue chanting Hare Krishna.
Yes.
And there's a quote in that book, I think came up on a weekend. I don't remember how long ago I read it, but Prabhupada said, even if you're chanting offensively, continue chanting, and eventually you'll be chanting inoffensively. So that's the only remedy for any of them, just continue chanting.
That's the point. How can you keep chanting? Yeah. Can I tell you a joke about atonement real quick? Yeah. We have time for a joke, Shruti? I know you don't like jokes. So a young man goes into confession. Father, I have sinned. I've had an illicit connection with a young lady in our congregation. And the father says, this is very bad. This is very bad. Was it Roseanne? No, Father. Was it Mary? No, Father. Was it Carol? No, Father. Anyway, so many Hail Marys, don't do it again. So he goes out, his friend says, what happened? He said, well, I got so many Hail Marys and 3 prospects. See, the problem is the problem is the heart has not changed. This is the difficulty, right? So chanting will change the heart. That's the idea. Yeah, John is crossing himself. Rasika Prabhu.
I think it's diametrically the opposite of what chanting is meant to do, because it's the chanting of the holy names that's supposed to elevate us above the modes so that we're not so affected by, the pull to do sinful deeds.
Right.
And so if you're doing the opposite of that and using it as a way to excuse sin, it's very offensive.
Yes, hence the how question. How can I get free of this desire? Okay.
Hello? Along the same lines is the intention. So if you're taking the holy name as a mop to mop up your sins and say, I'm going to go do this and then I'll clean it up afterwards, rather than I'm struggling with this sin, let me chant so I could purify my consciousness so that I lose the taste to commit this sin. Because there's also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I think, says for the commentary for the 9th chapter in the Gita, where it says if one commits a sin, then they quickly become rightly situated. And he poses that question, what if it keeps happening over and over again? And he says several times. And the point is if one's trying and trying and trying and trying to be free from it, then that's different than saying, all right, so today I'm going to go to Wendy's, I'm going to get a burger, I'm going to go home, chant it away. It's like the mentality of it, rather than how you're using the holy name, using it to come closer to Krishna or purify yourself, or just to keep being able to do whatever you want and you just clean it up afterwards.
Yeah. That's okay. Yes.
A while ago, I was talking to a devotee. Nobody from here, don't know him. And it was some other cities. But he just kind of confessed, I don't really follow every Ekadashi, and we're just kind of like, all right, whatever. And then he said, because then he said, then I go and chant my rounds so that I make it. And then he goes, no, actually, I don't even chant. So, but I guess the point I was thinking was that we don't want to stop chanting also because we feel so guilty about whatever we're doing wrong. I don't want to chant to cover the sins. It's just kind of going back to Nanda's point that no, one should feel intense repentance. And chant in the humble mood just so far. But that's chanting is the only way really to make progress, even if you're following.
Nice. Okay. Wow, there's so much discussion. I'd really like to finish this up. Kartikeya Prabhu, you have a quick comment?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the big one. That was very important.
One comment that I have is that about About a year ago, I was with Nitai upstairs, and we were reading from Sachinanda Maharaj's book about offenses. And he said that all those other offenses, by the mercy of the devotee, they can be worked out. But when we offend the devotee, then we have no hope.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Okay. Number 8. Anyone?
The eighth offense is to consider the holy name of the Lord and his chanting method to be equal to some material auspicious activity. There are various kinds of good works for material benefits, but the holy name and his chanting are not mere auspicious holy services. Undoubtedly, the holy name is holy service, but he should never be utilized for such purposes. Since the holy name and the Lord are of one and the same identity, one should not try to bring the holy name into the service of mankind. The idea is that the Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer. He is no one's servant or order supplier. Similarly, since the holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord, one should not try to utilize the holy name for one's personal service.
Okay. Comments? Chanting for world peace, yeah. that might be used for preaching, but it isn't the motive of the devotee. As we just read in the translation of this verse, even if one has all material desires or is free of material desires. Prabhupada said the devotee has desires to do what? The devotee desires to please Krishna, right? So we can't say the devotee is desireless. Quick comment? We'll wrap up here.
It says one should not try to utilize the holy name for one's personal service, but one can still pray for things separately from chanting, right?
If you so desire, Krishna, do this for me. If you so desire that I serve you in this way, then give me this facility. That's okay. But if we say, Krishna, I'm chanting. Okay. Okay, let's get the 9th offense in before 9 o'clock. Okay. Okay, 9th offense, Charles.
9th offense is to instruct those who are not interested in chanting the holy name of the Lord about the transcendental nature of the holy name. If such instruction is imparted to an unwilling audience, the act is considered to be an offense at the feet of the holy name.
Preach the glories of the holy name to the faithless. A good one before Thanksgiving. So we often have to spend time with relatives. Okay, next. 10th offense.
Offense is to become uninterested in the holy name of the Lord, even after hearing of the transcendental nature of the holy name. The effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is perceived by the chanter as liberation from the conception of false egoism. False egoism is exhibited by thinking oneself to be the enjoyer of the world and thinking everything in the world to be meant for the enjoyment of oneself only. The whole materialistic world is moving under such false egoism of I and mine, but the factual effect of chanting the holy name is to become free from such misconceptions.
Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All right, we finished. Do you want to hear that last joke about the various religions? You have time? Okay. This needs a little background. You know, there's so much anti-Semitism in the world. And one of the main reasons why is because the Muslim and Christian traditions did not allow usury in the Middle Ages. Usury means that if you loan money, you can collect interest on it. It was religiously prohibited for Christians or Muslims to charge interest, but not for the Jews. Hey, see? It was just different religious tradition. And so as a result of being able to charge interest on money, the Jewish populations became very wealthy and disproportionately dominant in European societies, therefore all of this anti-Semitism. So anyway, here's a Jewish joke. No. It's a wealthy miser on his deathbed, and he called in a rabbi and a priest and a pastor. And he said, I don't know which of you have the correct religion, but one thing, I'm calling on you because I consider you moral people, and I have a request with whom I could trust, to nobody else. And he gave each of them a box, and they said, open this box. In the box, it was $10 million cash, each box. He said, I want you all to come to my wake and bring this box and put it in my casket. I want to take it all with me. And they said, this is your request. We promise to honor your request. So the wake came, the three came, they duly put their boxes in, and the man was buried. So then they met afterwards, and the pastor said, my brothers, I have a confession. Our church needed a new roof so badly. I took out the money from that box for the new roof before I put it in. I'm so sorry. And the priest said, he got all embarrassed and said, I have to admit, we needed an orphanage, brand new orphanage to help. And I thought, surely it's more important for God's work to help all these orphans. So I just put some other paper in the box. Mm-hmm. And the rabbi said, well, personally, I don't like to handle so much cash, so I just deposited and put a check. They're all devotees. All right. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Of the senses, lusty tongues rarely can be overcome. While the soul is struggling on this earth, Krishna is so merciful, he helps us regain control. Leading in the after he has done, let us take what he has left, calling loudly, feeling blessed. Radha Krishna Jai, Nini Jai, Rani Jai, Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram.